This is going to be another solo Grandmaster Nightfall showing you how to farm the Adept Wendigo GL3. This time on a Warlock. We've already showed Titan and Hunter. So this one's going to be a Warlock run. So the same deal, we're using an Arc 3.0 subclass because we can use Unstoppable Arc Melee, right? So it just frees up loadouts. It means we can use what heavy we want to use, really, and stuff like that, as opposed to using a heavy GL. Which, as I said, you can use Anarchy if you wish. If you want to do the whole 3 Unstoppable GL and then double primary, you can do it like that. But on this run, I'm using Xenophage as opposed to on the Hunter I used Galahorn, on the Titan I used Arbalest with a heavy solo linear. This one's double primary Xenophage, which used to be the meta years ago, when Warmind cells were really strong and stuff, because you obviously could generate Warmind cells. The reason why double primary Xenophage is really consistent, just like that was for Anarchy, is because you get plenty of heavy, right? Because you're doubling up on a weapon. Whenever you double up on a weapon type, you get more heavy as a result. So if I literally ran double special heavy, I would get more heavy. It's the same for double primary, but double primary is better than double special for consistency for most players. The more expert players will be able to get away with the double special heavy because they'll rely more on the build, getting the kills, as opposed to having to run a primary and all this sort of stuff. But for most of you, you want to run double primary because it's infinite ammo, of course. So very similar to the Hunter, we've got Staccato again, because it's literally a best legendary solo you want to run solo scout, to be honest, unless you're using Polaris Lance, which I've showed off that gun in this, how good Polaris Lance is in this, and then an adaptive munitions pulse. Again, not required, but it does really help out. It means barriers aren't a problem and you don't have to run Arbalest. I've showed what it's like with Arbalest. I'm giving you options. I've showed you what it's like with Arbalest, without Arbalest, exotic heavy as opposed to exotic primary. You know, it's up to you at the end of the day what you choose. I'm just giving you the options, and there's more options than this, by the way. There's actually more options than what I've showcased, especially for Warden and nothing. But it's very important that you understand Warden and exactly how to consistently clear it solo, because it's Wendigo farm. It's the most important farm of the season, in my opinion. You just wait this week. There's going to be loads of videos on it and loads of people showcasing what role they got. It's a bit more important this week because the Adept version is more desirable than the standard, even though if you have a standard God rolled Wendigo, whatever you do, don't delete, because it ain't that much different to an Adept version. The difference is, let's be honest, Adept Big Ones. Adept Big Ones allows you to do the damage for... It combines Major Spec and Boss Spec in one mod. And the elite players will value that as something different. A little bit better to chase that than standard. Yeah, I suppose so, but grand scheme of things, it won't matter that much. But if you can get the Adept version with a good roll that you want, there's multiple rolls, by the way, which what you would want, then go for it by all means. It's not too difficult, Warden. If I can solo it, no problem. Teams can farm this in less than 10 minutes, less than 15 minutes, no problem at all. So for the Warlock, we're using Eye of Another World, which is an exotic you don't see in much of these days, but it is really good. There's 2 Arc 3.0 helmets that you can use. There's the Traces one, and then there's Crown of Tempests. I would say I pass on both. I'm not a big Arc guy like I used to be. I was big on Curse Reach when Geomag Stabilizers was really good with it. Still is kind of good, but it's nowhere near as good as it used to be. So I'm not massive on Warlock, but I do like a neutral exotic. That's what I'm all about. Heart of Immortal like Titan, Hunter, Fortress, we've showcased that off. So I thought I'll showcase a neutral exotic for the Warlocks. And that's Eye of Another World, because it gives you a lot of benefits, a lot of ability regenerate, and actually you can I believe you can exceed tier 10 stats with Eye of Another World. So it's a really good exotic for just slapping on and doing something behind the scenes, right? Which is what I'm a big fan of showing in videos for people, because then they can emulate the run a little bit better. Whereas if I start running a high skilled exotic like Liar's Handshake, people aren't going to replicate the run. Well, that's on a hunter obviously. People aren't going to replicate that as well. Crown of Tempests, there's a bit more skill with it. There's more times, more buffs to look at. Your ability kill timings need to be on point. And I don't value Crown Tempests in high-end content. I value it in master content and below, but when you get to higher-end content, it's not as good in my opinion. It doesn't work as good because enemies are more tanky and stuff like this. But if you want to use it by all means. You could run Geomags if you wanted and enhance your Chaos Reach, because Chaos Reach still melts champs. Let's not forget that it does. I haven't even got Geomags on, and you'll see me melt a champ later. You've just got to combine a couple of abilities, like get a pulse grade on that champ plus a super, and you'll see your super do quite significant amount of damage, despite there not even being arc acute burn on. It's solar. But again, I think it's better to run an arc class because you have free. It opens loadouts up. Don't get me wrong, I could run Weller Radiance and maybe do Anarchy with the loadout and stuff, but then I'm stuck with Anarchy, and Anarchy's like, I don't want to use that until next season, until it gets buffed. So it's like, there's options, but it's easy with the arc because it frees up a mod slot. It frees up a weapon type. It means I don't need unstoppable in the weapons. It's in the arc class itself, which is why I've run arc on all classes, just to showcase that mod 3 thing frees, loadouts up. So we're going to use a bit of Xenophage here, just to clear out the Hydra, giving us a bit of problems. We've expired all the goblins. We pushed up past the stairs, so the train took out a lot of the goblins and stuff. But make sure that you're getting hits on the goblins so that you get ammo drops off them. If the train kills all the goblins without you tagging them, you will not get ammo drops off them. You are guaranteed not to. If you get a tag, there's a chance. So we'll get a rift down here, get some Xenophage damage in. We're not using Lucent Finisher on this, which is good points for Xenophage. It shows that even without Lucent Finisher like I ran on the other two runs, didn't really need it. The ammo sustained itself. That's the thing about Xenophage, it's really a consistent weapon, always consistent, always the same. Especially since they changed the rate of fire on the weapon back to what it should be, because they messed around with it too much and the gun was like weird, and now it's back to what we remember it to be, because I think people are still sleeping on Xenophage again. It's back to what it used to be. It's back to being decent, very good. Like, for example, you take Spire of the Watcher, the dungeon, Percy's. Xenophage is one of the best options to use on that boss, apart from legendary rockets. It's fantastic. If you see now a lot of people soloing it, like if you look back at week 1 solos, no one was using the Xenophage on the boss. You look at solos on that dungeon now, everyone uses Xenophage on the boss because they know how consistent it is at getting you 2 million plus damage per phase. It's just a fantastic weapon overall. Very good on ammo, good for nightfalls, good for priority targets when you're dealing with champs all the time. If you wanted to slap on Lucent Finisher in the setup, you can. I was running Bomber. I wanted to really push the Eye of Another World recharge rates and add a Bomber with it, plus firepower, so that I'm getting plenty of nades. It's not as much as what a Titan would be with having most light, but it's pretty decent on Warlock, and it's simulating what I want. Getting grenades when I'm behind cover. With Ground of Tempest, I'm not doing that. I'm having to work harder for those grenade recharge rates. With this, I'm not having to work as hard, and it's working in the background without me having to actually do anything. And if I do get an Ionic Trace, which I am going to do, then that's only going to help even more so towards my next grenade and my next ability. So that's our first room dealt with. I spammed a good bit of Xenophage there. We had some bricks on the floor, so I recommend just doing it, just speed past that section. You don't want to mess about with it too much. The 2 unstartables room is up next. We haven't got a good strength stat. If you notice at the start of the video, it's probably tier 2, so it would benefit me a little bit if my strength was a little bit higher. Although Eye of Another World will help out a little bit with it, but it isn't the end of the world. You can just sit and wait for your next melee, because you're going to use your melee charge on the first unstoppable, and then you're not going to have a melee for quite a bit, of course. But you can just sit and wait for your melee, right? So it's not a big problem. This is the only time when you deal with 2 unstoppables. If you were dealing with double unstoppables back to back quite frequently, I would invest it in strength on this. But I'm not. It's only one occasion, so it's not worth my time to start putting on like Radiant Light and all this stuff. You're wasting mod slots. You know, I've got slots on for like Firepower, High Energy Fire, Countercharge, all really important mods that are far more useful to me on this build as opposed to what Radiant Light would be. It will give me a bit more strength, but again, you don't need to invest that. So when you get a finisher kill there as well, if you didn't know, whatever class you're on, if you do a finisher, it's classed as that element kill. So if you're on arc, when you get a finisher kill, it's classed as an arc kill, and then I'm getting amplified, which is really nice. We'll clear out some ads while we wait for our melee. We're halfway there. There are some fragments that can help out, like Spark of Recharge. So if you get critically wounded, you get ability energy and stuff. So, but we're just about there now anyway. I'll start enticing the champ to us. By the time the champ, because of that, slow these and stops. By the time he gets here, I've just about got my melee. What I've actually decided to do though, since I'm waiting anyways, rather than use Xenophage to kill, which I am quite low, I'm going to farm out some super energy, because obviously you can get supers fast off champs, whether they're stunned or not. It doesn't matter. Look at the super bar going up there. So I'm just going to farm out a super quick. Then once I've just about got my super, I'll get a stun, grenade plus chaos reach. So you must pulse grenade then super, not the other way around. You won't get the finisher in time. Like you won't do enough damage, because once you pop a chaos reach, you're locked into that animation. There's no way of you popping a grenade or something in between. So grenade first, then chaos reach, and it melts. Like I say, this is without Geomags and without an arc burn. So chaos reach is doing the damage. It's just builds surrounding chaos reach are the problem. You can't really build around it anymore, the super, which we used to be able to with Geomags. But at one point in time, Geomags become a problem. More of a PvP thing, if we're being honest, clipping walls and stuff, and they just sort of hit Geomags. And I feel as though it was PvP reasons more than PvE. Always is the case. Always is the case with that. But as they're getting better and better with patching the game and stuff, you would hope now they start to do a bit more PvP balancing on its own and PvE balancing accordingly when it's a problem in PvE. Geomags maybe was a little bit of a problem in PvE. It was something that when you're on Stormcaller, that's all you really ran. But why did we do that? Well, because Stormtrance ain't putting the damage out, and it still isn't. Great for Agclear, but not for anything else. Unless if you run the chestplate, there's a secret chestplate that no one's running for Stormtrance. But again, it takes a lot of build crafting to get that one right as well, if you don't know what I'm talking about. It's a Pacific Arc chestplate that increases Stormtrance's damage. So same thing as the other classes, we'll go for the Colossus first. I always go for the Colossus first, because the Colossus is the most dangerous champ to deal with. Our Arc Sword put him a good amount of damage. We'll just finish with Xenophage here, because I foreseen the overload pushing us, so I couldn't mess about there. So we'll get a stun here, and we're just going to use Xeno here, because we're going to get a finisher kill. It was worth doing that anyways, because I need to kill the Overlord at some point, so I may as well have just done it then when he pushed. And he's isolated himself away from all the other ads. So this time I'm going to leave the Unstoppable up, which is probably the better play, because the barriers are mostly concerned with the Unstoppable, but the Unstoppable can't see us, so the Unstoppable doesn't know that we exist right now. So we can just actually easily take out the barriers. This only works though if the Unstoppable hasn't seen you. If the Unstoppable sees you, then the Unstoppable is going to push you and interrupt what you're trying to do, which is take out the 2 barriers. If you were using Lucent Finisher, which I do highly recommend that mod, then you want to be a bit more tactical with your kills. Obviously I'm just killing because I haven't got that Lucent Finisher on. But again with Xenophage, the ammo economy is that good that you don't need it as much as what you do if you use, say, Galahorn or something, like a rocket. The champ has now seen us. The one con to what I've just done here, though, is if I dealt with the Unstoppable at the start, right, I would have had my arc melee back for the second Unstoppable that we're going to kill shortly. But I don't have it. This is a bit of a problem. Now I will get it back via ionic traces and stuff like this, but if I start round 2 too quick, I'm not going to have my arc melee in time for the Unstoppable, or the next Unstoppable, not this one, the next one, which is a critical champ that you must kill within a good time. If you don't, you won't cap A in time, and you won't have prepped C either. So this is a problem. So I'm stalling time. Sometimes I do this in runs. I don't think people notice when I'm stalling time and when I'm not. So we're going to be a bit creative, use these explosive barrels to do detonation damage as the champ's chasing us. That'll get the champ finishable, which means now we haven't wasted our melee, because we could have used it again, but obviously I didn't need to. And that means I've got my melee. I'm happy now. I've got my melee for round 2, which is what you definitely need. Make sure you don't accidentally use it. If you do, you're gonna ruin the chances of success on this section, because you are timed. You'll get the 60 seconds. You've got that 60 seconds to melt. You've literally got 50 seconds, haven't you? Because you can't just play to 60 seconds. But once you step on play, timer does stop. So you melt the barrier like so. Get a nade. Use Xenophage. Don't worry about finishes. Just melt, and then get around this corner as soon as possible to aggravate the champ to you. We'll get a stun there. Now I'm using Ball Lightning. This hasn't been mentioned once. I suppose I'll mention it now. Ball Lightning is the superior melee to the Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is a lower cooldown, but the melee is nowhere near as good. So that means I can stun a champ at range. Obviously you want your super for that Unstoppable. Well, if you don't have it, use Xenophage, but then you're starting to roll the dice with ammo, aren't you? So it's a good time to use the super. Do a bit of ad clear on C. When the timer gets to like 5, make sure you backtrack and don't time it wrong, because obviously if you don't cap A in time, it'll blow up and then your run will be over. But the timer does stop when you stand on that plate. You can stop and start it at any point as well. So we've cleared out C. I'm going to cap B. It really doesn't matter which one you start with, B or C. Just know that when you're on B, sometimes ads come out the door behind you. That's based on how many ads are killed. Because sometimes the Vex can kill enough percentage of Cabal for that to happen. So just be wary. Just look behind is all I'm saying. Now we'll go for C. Plenty of time on this. The Void Shield is still up. So I'm going to have to get a pulse grenade down, use some Xeno. 2 shots takes down that match game shield. So good. It was, even if you're low on ammo, that is critical that you do that when there's a, because if they melee you, they almost one shot. And if they follow up with a Void Blast attack, you're dead. So that Void Shield must be taken down if the Void Shield is not fighting enemies. You were to hope that the Void Shield is fighting over enemies, and sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. Also, do not kill the Overload on the cap phase. I've said this in every run, but I'll say it again. Don't do it, because you will the lower the chances of getting platinum rating. Because if you kill the overload, a second overload spawns. And if that happens, you need to kill that second overload. You must, lest you won't get platinum. It screws the platinum rating up. Whereas if you entirely skip, you still get platinum rank. Because you get a 3 token to skip a champ in GM Nightfalls. This is true for most of them. Some of them there's 2. Lightblade you can skip 2 champs and still get platinum rating. And that's not RNG, that's an actual thing. I believe it's a fail-safe mechanic to stop you from losing platinum rating. So you don't need to clear every champ that spawns, but you could. Some of them, some Nightfalls are only 1 you can skip, some are 2. It just depends. It depends how much you play GMs. Obviously I play them quite a lot. And it's part of my thing to sort of know all the spawns and know all the little tips and tricks, because that's what I make videos on, isn't it? That's one thing I make videos on, so I've got to know it. And Warden's always been like this. You always skip overload. Always. But people get confused on that. And I suppose it's not very clear in the game. They don't know. They don't say anywhere in the game what platinum rating is. Discussed this in other runs. There should be a more of a sophisticated rating score system where platinum rank is not only dictated by how many champs you've killed, but how much score you accumulate and how fast you do the run. I know people don't like the time element from 2017 and stuff, but it didn't half make things a lot more interesting then than as opposed to now. And I think it would balance GMs out, because GMs have gotten it noticeably easier. To give you a reference, Warden used to take 50 minutes to up to an hour on the old GMs. Right? When I was originally doing them, they were like a 45-minute run. That time is halved. Right? And it's same is true for Devil's Lair. Remember when Devil's Lair? People were taking an hour and 30 minutes to do it when they were first out. Now Devil's Lair is like 20-minute run solo. Right? If there was some sort of time element to GMs, as in if you don't beat it in the time, you go to orbit, or it impacts platinum rating, it would make GMs harder, because you would have to push yourself a little bit harder. But I know people don't like it, but honestly it would make a big difference. It's either that or we just stand around here and complain about GMs, which that's what people are doing, aren't they? But we'll see what happens in Nightfall with the abilities and the tuning, that you better stun champs with abilities. Will this change it, make it more difficult? I'm cautious, because you're still going to need a gun to stun a champ. I think so. I think you're going to, when you're solo, you're still going to need some backup power. Right? Like, for example, with the Void, it doesn't sound too good that we're stunning champs with volatile rounds. No, this isn't good. Tell you why, because there's only the Hunter that's good at volatile rounds. The Warlock and the Titan are poor build crafting for volatile rounds, unless something changes about that. Yes, you can get grenade kills and they give you volatile rounds, but that ain't gonna help you stunning champs all the time. You're gonna need a backup weapon, 100%. So that isn't looking good, even though everyone's saying how good it is. So there's some problems with the system I foresee already without us even seeing it, but we'll see what happens when it comes out. But I foresee it solo-wise, you might need some backup weapons to stun champs. Because certain Nightfalls have tons of champs. This, Glassware, you can't just rely on Radiant. Well, Radiant's actually one of the better ones, because that's one of the easiest activations. Radiant. I think a lot of people are going to start running Stasis, because you can stun all three types of champs with that subclass. And they're going to start relying on chill clip weapons, which will be good, but it will get old. People are saying, oh, how good it is now, but you try 6 months of just running chill clip fusion. See how bored you get with that. You will get bored. So I'm skeptical on the new system, but it's in the right direction. We need abilities to stun champs. So it's pretty straightforward with the champs. I didn't narrate the entire thing with that because it's the same as what I've done with the other classes. Make sure that you're near the exploit zone when you finish the final champ. Same as the other two classes, it's the same position that you take. This will allow anyone to do it. This is why I'm using it, the no cheese. Obviously, you can do it where you do it a legit run. I've done a legit run, but alterations to the class would and the loadout would happen then for me. This wouldn't be a good solo for legit run, but I never had that in mind in the first place for this run. This was just a good way of stunning all 3 champs and for someone to get a clear. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all this is really. It's not a skilled run. I'm by no means saying that it is a skilled run. But it is a run to help people out to get the guns to get a gun. To get the Wendigos, to get the platinum ratings, to farm exotics, to farm what they need. And at the end of the day, that's all it really is. But that was a solo for the Warlock. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.